3, 2, 1, action.
Hey, how's it going, guys? This is Josh, and I'm here with
Scott Moon.
And we are Keystroke Medium, and today we are talking about battle scenes on The Right Stuff. This is episode 3 on March 25th, 2016. Thanks for listening. It had kind of a rocky start this morning.
Yeah, we did. Technical difficulties.
Ridiculous technical difficulties in trying to set up the blab this morning, and our ears and microphones weren't working, but now we got them going.
Hey, can you hear my kids upstairs?
Stomping around like elephants.
I wanted to make sure because every time we've done this 3 times, and we always try to do it when the house will be somewhat quiet on my end, and they just keep not having school. I'm like...
Hey, really, honestly, though, Fridays really aren't good for school for me.
Yeah, they're pretty rough. So I'm going to adjust I have my thing a little bit more. I was like, man, that.
I like to see more of the Hulk. I like that. More
I probably should have shaved today. I kind of jumped up, took the car into the shop, dropped it off, did all that stuff. So I'm kind of surprised we're actually on schedule. So anyway, so we talked about maybe a little bit of light conversation before we hit our topic. Not too much. I don't know. Did you have anything you wanted to cover, clear the air before we get started?
Not really. I did a lot of research on podcasting this week to see what we could do for setting up the episodes for our show on iTunes. And it really seemed pretty simple. But it was a lot of reading a lot of pointless articles to find out you shouldn't do this and you should do this. And I was like, you could have told me that 15 minutes ago before I read this article.
Yeah.
But
I listened to some good ones called Creators Cast by Scott King. See if I can find the link. And he had some pretty good ones, pretty good podcasts. And I liked it. I liked his music intro and stuff. So, yeah,
actually, I just saw. Where did I see that on? I saw the SPP guys did a link for showrunners. Yeah, somebody said showrunners was good too. And the SPP guys actually put up a link that was it had a website for a whole bunch of musical entries and intros and different things.
I put Scott King's on there link in the sidebar if anyone wants to look at it later.
Oh, is he going to the Smart Artist Summit too?
Yeah. He had some good interviews. I liked it. I liked his. You could tell he's been doing it a little bit longer, and it's got a nice little music intro, and his questioning is real fluid. I liked it a lot. It's good.
I have to say, I'm super jealous that you're going to that, and I'm not very jealous.
It's snuck up on me too. I'm like, holy crap! Next week, going to Austin, Texas.
That's awesome.
My car will probably break down. There'll be more fires along the Oklahoma border. Firestorms and
get swapped up in a wildfire.
Tornadoes and snowstorms in Kansas. And
it's crazy. Did you see the picture the other day where it had the fires burning, and then the very next picture it was like a blizzard?
Yeah, Northwest Kansas, they had a blizzard. South Central Kansas, we had firestorms, and then I think we had tornado warning someplace. So good time.
For those of you listening that don't know who Scott and I are, we live in Kansas, in the southeastern part of Kansas, and not only is it severely flat, but the fires that happened the other day in Oklahoma and southeastern Kansas, it was like, have you ever seen The Mummy when the big sandstorm comes up? Mummy's attacking. That's exactly
the wall
of sand just coming across. And I was like, this is Armageddon right here. We're all going to die.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It made me think.
How's it going, Jamie?
Hi, Jamie. You're going to the Smarters Artist too. That'll be awesome. Good to see you down there. We're talking about that. Every episode so far, we've at least mentioned the Mistborn, and that made me think of the Mistborn when those fires were going and the sun turned red and it was all smoky and misty. It made me think of that show. So
I took a picture of that right when I was getting ready to leave. It was only on my phone. I don't know if you can see it on. It's probably too
It's pretty bright. Well,
there we
yeah,
go.
a little bit.
Kind of creepy. So anyway, today we're talking about battle scenes. Scott and I were talking about this the other day, and how sometimes less is more, and how sometimes they can just get kind of too big for what you're trying to do. And the first example that I could think of was, I don't know if you've ever read David Weber's Honor Harrington series.
I like it. It's a good series.
The first book on Basilisk Station is a really good space opera, military science fiction book, where Honor Harrington gets sent out to this space station, a big nexus basically of trade, to kind of quell everything that's happening out there. And there's a lot of good tension and battle scenes that specifically in that book that I like ground battles with the aliens and stuff. But the one that popped into my mind was that the end, where it's like a whole, I don't know, 2 or 3 chapters. It's like a good quarter of the book. Well, probably not that long. Anyway, where they're going after this, it was a freighter, but it was like what am I trying to say? It was hidden. It was a hidden warship, and now it's like trying to run away. And he spends, I don't know, a couple chapters talking about this chase through the system with the ships and the battle that's going on between them. And it's very personal, I thought, when you have Honor and the bridge crew, and that's really all you have. And then later on in the series, when you get to like the Short Victorious War, or even A Rising Thunder, which is, I think, like book 14.
I don't think I've made it to book 14 yet. I think I'm like on 3 or 4 in that series. Yeah,
and you know what? Once you get past 7, meh. But anyway, when you get to book like 14, the battle scenes are so vast that nothing happens. It's basically he puts the setup in where 500 starships are coming from this direction and 500 starships are coming from this direction, and then they launch the missiles, and that's the end of the battle scene. That's it.
Right.
And the missiles launched.
Well, in that genre and several others I've read that are similar, there's like, to ride in that genre with the space battles, you have to have like establish all your rules of how the space works, because otherwise you're like being cheesy, even though it's probably all cheesy.
It's never cheesy in battle.
Yeah, but like, because you got to explain, the time lag and this and that, and you can't just like Star Trek it and have the warp drive, and so there's a lot of that, and I guess it makes the battles very complex. It's a good device for increasing tension, because like in the Honor Harrington, they don't just fire a laser and it rips across there. You have to wait for the impact of the missiles, and they're inbound for like 20 minutes, and you can change your character view in between time and all that.
Right. But yeah, I think I actually like if you just see a glimpse of battle from the character's viewpoint.
What's your favorite battle scene? So we're talking in general, kind of getting it set up what our topic is. Do you have something like when we were discussing this throughout the week, we talked about some other versions, like in the Lord of the Rings movies, at least they always try to make kind of and I'm not sure that I like it, but when they do the joking around between Gimli and Legolas, and it's kind of like they're trying to bring it into a smaller part of the battle.
Oh, when they're going, I've got 15, and he's like, I've got 14.
Yeah, it's kind of,
you're shorter than me, and you got pointy ears.
Yeah. But they focus in on. It's easier to digest that little personal part of the battle than the big,
right? And I think the thing that works in the movies that it'd be nice if you could do in literary form, but it would kind of be, I can't think of a way to do it, but you know how they have the sweeping camera pans of the battle when you come in, and I'm thinking specifically of Helm's Deep, when they pan in over, and you see all the orcs running up the ramp to the tower, and you've got all the ladders slapping up against the. Yeah, you've got the drone view, which gives you a whole look at, oh yeah, this is a big ass battle that's happening here, and it's really intense. But then you go down to where Legolas and Shorty are fighting and counting their numbers, and that's.
We talked about limited or controlled third point of view and limited omniscient last week, and you can do that. I mean, if you had some omniscient narrative, you could do the overview. Stephen King does it in a couple of his books. He'll slip into that and like literally have a kind of a drone view where you're getting a bird's eye view.
Right. You talk about omniscient viewpoints. I mentioned Tom Clancy does that in some of his books, where you have like a Hunt for Red October, where he's talking about the submarine blowing up from, I don't know, I can't remember what it was, some technical difficulty, some kind of mechanical glitch, but he's talking like he is the engine. Like he's like, and then the engine that was built in Russia in 1942 by Liam, who had 2 divorced parents.
Right.
And he was sick that day when he put in the part. And so that part's going to break.
That part's faulty, and then it causes everything to, it's almost like the inanimate object becomes a character slightly, it's basically an omniscient viewpoint like that. So it's, instead of coming from the bird's eye view, it's coming from like the inside, the micro viewpoint.
Right. Yeah. Which I think is okay. But his first book was okay, but when you get into the later books, you're just like, oh my God, there's a whole chapter on who built the sprocket, and I don't want to know who built the sprocket.
Oh, I haven't read any Tom Clancy for a while. I'll have to get back into that. So, how do you handle a fight scene or a battle scene? Because I know I've read most of the stuff you have out there or that's about ready to come out, and so I understand your viewpoints and kind of how many characters you have and a little bit about it. So how do you handle battles? Because I know there's a few in your books.
It was easier for me in the first book, Breaking Through, and actually I spent quite a lot of time trying to figure out if I wanted to do first person or third person for the series, because originally I wrote it first person, and then I got into this battle scene where 3 people are in different places. Excuse me. Where 3 people are in different places, and I couldn't figure out how to show the action in first person, because the main character at some point dives under like a table, let's just say, and he can't see the rest of the action. And I wanted to show the rest of the action, so I had to go back and write it in third person. But in this third book, there's a lot of battle scenes. They're not really battles. I mean, they're short fights or whatever. And
action sequences.
There you go. I like that, action sequences. But I've decided that the main character in the past is Wendy, as you know, and it's Neverland. And the part of the story is her and the Lost Boys coming together and how they form their group. And Wendy is not a fighter by her own will. She's kind of thrown into it, and so she doesn't know really anything about it. And so I start off in the beginning of the book, her reacting to the fights going around her and starting her off way in the distance from it. So like the first scene where she actually does something into the battle, she's been handed this rifle, and she's fired rifles before, but not very often, and only so her dad could familiarize her with the weapon. So she's standing on this roof several blocks away from where the action is happening, so she can see what's going on and react to it. And then eventually something happens where she has to take action and use the rifle, but it's not.
Does rifle have a scope or any type of enhanced optics? Okay.
Yeah. So she can look in and see, what the actual people are doing on the street. And then as the book progresses and she becomes more and more enamored, is that the right word? Involved. We'll do that. She becomes more involved in the fighting in the process, then you get closer and closer to the action. And eventually by the end of the book, she's all in it and going to town and blowing people's heads off and stuff. But
just for kind of our guests we got here, we're talking about your Neverland series or Second Star.
Second Star.
Can you give me your tagline or just a short thing so people know kind of what that book's about? Might make more sense.
Second Star is basically a science fiction action adventure about Peter Pan and Neverland, where Peter Pan's the bad guy and Neverland is a real place, planet, an alien planet somewhere else, and they get transported to there by mysterious aliens. But anyway, I actually wish the book is actually a series, but I wish I hadn't written in it a series. So I'm writing book 3 right now. And I have the final and 4th book mostly planned out, plotted out, but the 3rd book should be out this summer, I think.
Yeah. It'd be good to see that.
Yeah, man, I'm so ready to be done with it.
You're like me, though. You're like me. We talk about all the time. I got too many projects going at once and stuff, and I wish that I could write a book a week because I have like 47 of them literally in my project folders. I was showing somebody that the other day, and they're like, I had no idea you had that many books started. I'm like, well, some of them have been published, and some of them are still waiting. But I think I'm up to 47 project folders. Those are just my that's not including the ones that I've basically shelved forever. So,
Jamie Crumpton says, what did you eat the night you came up with that idea? And honestly, I can't remember what I was eating. I came up with the idea because of trying to come up with different stories, and I'd been stuck on the book that I had been writing, and it wasn't going anywhere. And I decided to sit down and brainstorm idea topics, and one of the topics was. Go ahead.
I remember you coming by and talking to me about that before you really showed. I was at New Market or something, and you came by. And you're like, I got this great idea. I remember you were really excited.
Yeah, it was the concept was come up with a fairy tale where the typical protagonist change that and make them the antagonist. Right. And I don't even know how Neverland popped into my head, but it did. And I was like, oh, that'd be cool if Pan was the bad guy. And so there it went. But like I said, I planned it as a serial. I planned it as a 5-part serial, which I probably shouldn't have done for my first book. That was probably pretty dumb. And I won't do it again.
Well, it's not your first book. It's the first one
right
in this new Kindle indie publishing era. Because you've been writing I think you told me today, since you're 14.
Yeah. Since I was probably 13 or 14, been writing books, and I've completed several. I've not completed hundreds. I probably I don't even know how many I have, but hint, if you're writing your first book and you want to publish it, don't write a serial. write the whole thing out.
Write the whole thing out, then you can release them all really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you? You told me the other day that you were going through your final revisions on your 3rd weapons book?
Yeah. Weapons of Earth is for the Enemy of Man series, basically, but it starts out at the end after a battle has happened. In the end of Son of Orlon, there's been this huge battle of the Bleeding Grounds. And so it starts, and I kind of did a version of what we're talking about not going into the entire battle, because the book 2 leads up to this huge battle. And I have the battle, but mostly the plots get resolved and then we move on. I don't waste a lot of time doing it. So, so book 2 kind of starts where that leads off. And so I've had to deal with there's lots of battles in this particular series. It's sci-fi, military adventure. So yeah, it's the same way. And I got lots of other things going. I'd like to get this one done, but what I was working on yesterday was pretty good. I got almost to, I divide my books into 4 parts when I write them from that story engineering book. I think Larry Brooks is the author, but so I divide them into 4 parts so that I've had a problem in the past where I leave too much to be fixed at the end of the book. So now I have kind of part 1, part 2, and part 3 is the middle, and some escalation of tension. Then by part 4, all my characters and everything has to be set up so that the book can be resolved. So yesterday I almost finished part 1. I'm really excited. I'd like to get that off to some alpha readers and stuff pretty soon, hopefully.
Do you have an issue with trying to figure out how to write because you have some scenes in your book where they kind of go back and forth, where you've got like a space fight going on and then a ground fight going on. Yeah,
I like first of all, tying that into what we talked about before, points of view in space battles. I guess our topic today is the space battle scenes, whatever. I like 1 point of view per chapter, and then I like to change the point of view basically for tension. Like my favorite character that I'm writing right now is actually Rebecca, who's the commander of a mech warrior unit, and her and her crew are just awesome. They're fun to go hang out with, but yeah. So basically, I like to go back and forth. I change points of view. If I stay with one character as the main point of view. The hardest thing is I have some non-human characters. And Droon is basically a Reaper, kind of like if you think of Aliens and Predator mixed into one, and then throwing some other stuff. And he kind of doesn't have a real good time sense. So when he talks, sometimes it's kind of like all in present tense. But so his idea of a battle scene is his perspective and what he sees as interesting in a battle scene is very different from what the people see.
Is that harder? Does that take you longer to write his point of views because you actually have to stop and think about how he sees it?
I found myself slipping back into a humanistic or human-centric type of viewpoint where he doesn't think or talk. And it's hard because he refers to himself in third person sometimes or whatever. So he'll call himself Droon, and that can be really difficult. In an internal monologue, you keep calling yourself by your own name.
Yeah.
A lot of people, he's their favorite character. His chapters are shorter because it's hard to maintain that point of view for a long time because it's non-human. So,
I was reading, we were talking about Mistborn the other day, and we seem to, I think all 3 episodes we've had so far.
Yeah, we always talk Mistborn. About it. I'm listening to it now, and you finished it.
We're gonna turn into Mistborn fanboys, I think, and have to have to follow him around on tour with signs saying, "We love you, Brandon."
Yeah,
but his combat scenes are pretty interesting when especially when Vin is learning how to burn metals and use her allomancy. That's pretty fun.
I haven't got her doing a whole lot yet. She's just
they're pretty interesting, and they're not overly long, and they're not real short either. They're just like a good. You get some action and enjoy her learning and fighting and stuff like that. But I can't remember which book I was reading. You know what? It's Dark. Is it Dark Between the Stars? It's a Kevin J. Anderson book that I'm reading right now. The Dark Between the Stars, and if you're going to have a combat scene in a book, have it at least do something for the plot. And a lot of I read the chapter that he had, it started out with like a practice fighting scene where they were just doing combat just to do combat. I keep feeling like the roof is going to cave in.
You hear my kids. I'm waiting for the heater to come on, and then there to be some sort of argument upstairs, and they'll be like I said. It's hilarious when they're having fun. It's like a jungle gym above me, I swear.
Yeah. No, but so anyway, in that scene, it was a lot of kicks and punches and flips around and stuff, and it made me think. Fighting scenes like that are great in movies. Specifically, I was thinking of like a Jackie Chan movie where he's fighting like 3 dudes and they're all flipping around and doing judo chops and roundhouse kicks to the faces. But it's really hard to translate that into the literary world. Sanderson does that pretty well
for sure. Yeah,
they do try, but you can honestly tell when you read somebody who's never actually been in a fight or have researched it all. I guess you don't have to be in a fight to know what you're talking about, but they haven't researched it, and and it's just he threw a punch in his face and he went down.
It's the pacing is hard for fight scenes and stuff because like in a real fight, actually, and it makes more sense when you watch movies and read things. In a real fight, your time sense is much altered. So when you like write either a battle scene or an action scene, there's times where you have them doing the action, he charged forward and threw a right punch. But there's time for that character. You can do some internal monologue or some little bit of narrative summary to kind of control the pace of it, and that's probably okay because all the scuffles I've been in, and been in a couple, you can control the pace mentally. You can make it feel like longer and give yourself time to think, and it's kind of counterintuitive. So that's interesting how that could come into a writing sense. But one of the ones I really like, when I asked you what your favorite battle scene was, I like David Weber and John Ringo. Is it John Ringo? In the Prince Roger March Up Country, the Prince Roger series. There's a lot of battle in that, and he does an excellent job. And he controls his battle scenes through points of view. Mm-hmm. It also helps that I listened to him an audiobook, and the narrator is friggin' fantastic. I've listened to it like 3 times now. It's crazy.
Yeah, he does really. I like his voice. It's very deep, like a military person.
Stefan Rudnicki or something like that. Yeah, he's pretty. He read another book that I listened to, the Genghis Khan one too. It was pretty good. So.
And you tell him hell's coming with me. I just said that because she's talking about Tombstone. It's a great movie. Great battle scenes. Point 1 for Josh. I'm going to high five myself on that reference. I can't high five myself.
You can't?
Oh, yes. I got some high fives.
Sure you can. Oh, you can.
I can't high five myself.
That's so unfair.
I know. Because I'd be sitting here high five myself the whole time.
I might have a blab where I just by myself and I just high five. Set up a dummy account so I can get the most high fives.
It's when you move your references, I say a lot of things from movies, and a lot of people, especially my wife, she'll look at me and she'll like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? That was a great movie reference," and it's lost on everybody. I was running with Bob the other day, and we were running around this track at Central County Park. Is a big, it's a 4-mile track, but it's a road track, and people ride their bikes and stuff out there. And
so they have the Renaissance Fair.
Yes,
every year. Yeah.
You have to constantly look behind you to make sure that you're not going to get run over by a bike, because these bikes just fly. They're like passing on the left, but as soon as you hear them say left, their bike has already passed you, and you barely missed your death. So anyway, he kept turning and looking while we were running, and at one point he says, "Man, I'm gonna have to start pulling Crazy Ivans to make sure that I know what's going on." And I looked at him. I was like, "That is a fantastic movie reference." He was like, "Oh, you got it." I'm like, "Yeah, I got it. Hunt for Red October. It's a great movie reference."
We do.
If I would have done that, nobody would have got it.
Bruno and I do movie references in Squad. and we'll throw them out there and usually like one other person in there will get it. And
Right.
I can't remember what I was talking about. And Burke, I think, said I was born in 1988. So I was like, oh my god. So you're not gonna. I was forcing them to listen to Bananarama.
Why would you do that?
Because somebody said something about it, and so I made them listen to Cruel Summer.
Horrible.
And they're like,
horrible.
They looked at me like I was 1,000 years old.
And rightfully so. Bananarama, come on.
Right. I didn't particularly care for Bananarama then, but looking back on it, they're a lot more fun than they were back in the day. So,
well, I made the Tombstone reference the other day, and somebody looked at me and they said, yeah, Kevin Costner was great in that movie. And I was like, no, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing at all. It was Piner, so I didn't. But
she should know better.
I know.
Anyway.
Yeah. I said, we don't talk about that Wyatt Earp movie.
No,
that's like the Dark Lord. That's the one we don't speak of.
I'll go and redact it out of this podcast later.
Yeah, it's got to be double redacted.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're back on track with fight scenes. Tombstone has a lot of good choreographed fight scenes that you could probably take all those scenes that they had, especially like the one at the OK Corral, and transfer that over into a literary sense. And somebody obviously did when they wrote the screenplay. But I could see how that scene would be written fantastic in a book, especially if you're going either a couple viewpoints or even just one. But I think it would be done specific with multiple viewpoints, and just the tension at the beginning of that scene before they even start fighting, built up.
Talking about fight scenes from movies, I'll Be Your Huckleberry.
It's a great line. Great line.
There's a lot of Tombstone quotes at work, but the screenwriters and writers for movies of that caliber with that kind of budget, you're talking, these movies nowadays got $100 million budget, or basically anything by Disney right now. They pay their writers a lot of money, and they follow some formulas. But there's like last week we talked about keeping your scenes relevant, and then I watched the movie Brooklyn, and it's all right, but everything in that movie was relevant to the scene. And so like with your fight scenes, like for Tombstone and some of those, they're going to be awesome because they're paying those people a lot of money to do a good job. Now, when I wrote Enemy of Man, the first book in my science fiction series was initially a screenplay. I wrote a screenplay because I wanted to try one, and it was a lot of fun. Well, then I novelized the screenplay, which was a huge pain in the ass. I don't know if I would recommend that to anybody unless you just really want to punish yourself for no reason. But and that affects the way, because we talked before, is that particular series I'm writing is really heavy on action. So because screenplays are mostly dialogue and a little bit of narrative summary. So you take that, you turn it into a novel. So my whole book has a lot of action in it, and I'm constantly fighting to dial it down and get it under control. And then reading all the books on writing, I talk about leave out the boring parts. So I did that too. So my biggest problem with those fight scenes is they almost need more digression, more narrative summary, more getting into the character's head, a little bit more talk about why they're afraid or whatever, things like that, rather than just pounding them with the action all the time.
Well, and when you write a screenplay, the whole show don't tell really doesn't affect screenplays that much, because you actually, when you're writing a screenplay, you have to tell the director or whoever's making the movie, this is what they see and this is why it affects them, so they can then tell the actor, this is what you have to do. I've never written a screenplay. I've read a couple of them, but when you're writing a novel or a literary piece of that fiction or whatever you're writing, when you write out the action, you're showing it, instead of telling it. But then when you do a screenplay, it's almost the exact opposite. I mean, you're going to show it when it's in movie form, but you've got to tell it in the screenplay. So I don't know how
you write a screenplay says something like Josh grabs guy off the top of the Epic Center before he falls 24 stories to his death.
It was 25, and I almost crapped myself.
Yeah, that was a good one. I wish we could put that on Blab. That was a video.
Oh, man.
For our viewers, the other day, I came into work and I got to see a video of Josh and another guy we know named Powers. And they had a person who wanted to commit suicide on the top of a 24th story building. And 25th story. 25, which is supposed to be closed to the public, but somehow this guy got out there. And I walked up, I'm watching this video, and I'm seeing Josh pull Powers and this guy back off the ledge. I'm like, yeah. And I like heights, but when you're up that high, I don't know if anybody's ever been on a building that's that tall. When you get close to the edge, it's like your perception gets distorted, and it's like you're getting sucked off the side. I'm not trying to give you a flashback or a little PTSD there.
I'm going to go into spasms here in a minute thinking about it.
Yeah, that was impressive. So that should probably be the scene in somebody's book.
Yeah, we need to I can show that.
Yeah. Well, and if you've never seen the Epic Center, the roof is not flat. The roof is like angled like this. So all of this happened standing on the side of this roof with a railing and the little access door. And so it's like, what's the line from Armageddon? Scariest environment imaginable. That's all.
Yeah. That's all you got to say. It's the scariest environment imaginable. Yeah. And then you got to get off the nuclear warhead because they don't like that.
Yeah. All right. How's our timer doing?
I did not set the timer. Like I said, I was going to. I did not set it. Okay. I'm going to guesstimate that we're at about 45 minutes, though. I think. Okay. I think we still got plenty of time.
Does anybody that's watching have anything at all?
Favorite battle scenes, favorite action scenes that you can think of. While we're waiting for people to type, I missed mentioning one, which was the Dark Tower series, the Gunslinger, the first book specifically, where he's going through Tull, like killing everyone in Tull. And the narrative that I like in that scene is his fingers did his work, basically. And that's what he kept saying, like it repeats the whole time. And his fingers went to work, and his fingers did their work. And he writes that because they're basically doing it unconsciously, because he knows what he's doing, and it's all muscle memory to him. But he didn't say.
I found that other quote when you were talking about that. It says, I do not shoot with my hand. He who shoots with his hand has forgotten the face of his father.
Right. Yeah, because it's all muscle memory. And going back to showing, not telling, he didn't tell us. His muscles remembered his training from years of training. It was the fingers did their work. And that, I think that was, and he didn't have to describe what his hands were doing. I think a lot of beginning authors, I've done the same thing when I'm trying to describe what's going on, and then I over describe and I say he grabbed the bullet with his thumb and index finger and dropped it into the chamber and closed the chamber with his other hand and then fired. You dumb that down to, and his fingers did their work, and you understand what they're talking about.
So Mean Girls, we were talking about fight scenes. I haven't seen Mean Girls.
Mean Girls, is that the one with Lindsay Lohan? I think that's.
I might have to see it. I'll watch that tonight.
I think I've seen it, but I can't remember anything specific about it. I want to say that Lindsay Lohan's in it. I can see the brown hair girl. She was in Lost in Space as a little kid, but I can't remember her name. It was an interesting with movie.
Names. I would even if it was my favorite author, I probably still would, or actor, I probably still would barely remember the name. But yeah, on the Gunslinger stuff, he does good battles.
Outlander. Outlander. Everybody always when they talk about Outlander, and even when I see it on Amazon, it's right next to Game of Thrones, and everybody's like, "Oh, you got to read Outlander." And I've been hesitant to read it, but I probably should because everybody says the books are phenomenal.
They're good. That's what I've read so far.
It's probably going to be one of those things, and I'm going to mention Mistborn again here. I need a Brandon sign, say Brandon Sanderson. But it's really probably going to be one of those things where I read it and I absolutely love it. And the only reason I didn't start reading it to begin with is because the tagline in my head for that book is time traveler, Scottish romance. And so when I think of that in my head, I'm like, I don't want to read that. But if
you read what's the Donald Mass, he wrote a book that was real popular a while back called Writing the Breakout Novel.
Yeah, The Literary Agent.
Yeah, and he talks a lot about Outlander and the way that as a breakout concept in one of the earlier cross-genre success stories. So I watched a couple of the videos of Outlander, but I haven't got through the whole thing yet.
There's another podcast out there that Hank Garner does called the Author Stories Podcast, and he has interviewed the author of the Outlander series. I can't remember her name off the top of my head.
Diana Galbadon.
Galbadon.
Yeah, I'm gonna butcher that, but I would recognize it if I saw it.
That was one of her things.
Galbadon.
Yeah, Gabaldon.
Gabaldon. That sounds like the name of a dragon in a fantasy book. I'm going to use it.
When she talked about coming up with the book, and that was her first book. Well, it was her first published book, but she said she wanted to come up with an idea that nobody had done before, like everybody wants to. And she said that she liked the history in that area, and she was like, I want to write a period piece. And then she said, yeah, but period pieces are kind of overdone. And so then she got to the time traveling aspect of it. But yeah, I think when I actually read it, I'll probably like it. Like the reason I didn't start reading Mistborn until recently is I was like, a fantasy heist novel, which is how he sells the books. And his name. But I was like, I don't know if I want to read a fantasy heist novel. Like, I don't know. But then I started reading it and I liked it. So probably the same thing is going to happen when I start reading Outlander. I don't want to read a Scottish romance, but then I get into it and I'm going to really like it.
Yeah. I read almost any genres, and I'll watch almost any type of movie. Like I was talking about Brooklyn, that was pretty good. Not my normal thing, but yeah, I have the audiobook for the Outlander. I've been meaning to go through that, and I've watched some of the season, and maybe I'll read it too. I don't know. I like to read books just because they're awesome and have sold well, just kind of see what people like about them, whether it's my genre or not.
Except for Shades of Grey. Don't read that book.
I tried. I read 30%. I got to this is great. This is not, I would have never thought that would have worked its way into our podcast, but the part where I finally, and I'm somebody, if you've talked to me at all, is I have to finish a book. I can't put it down. I have to, if I start it, I got to read the whole thing, even if it takes me 20 years. But I ejected from 50 Shades because there's a scene where it's like talking about the contract. And it's literally just like a legal contract in a book. And I'm like, I don't want to read 20 pages of legal. I don't care what the contract's for. That is dumb.
Yeah.
And I was out. Bye. So anyway.
I bought.
So stab me in the eye. Does that mean you're a fan or not a fan?
I don't think she's a fan. I read that and I say she is not a fan. That's what I say. I bought my wife those books because she was really interested, and it was funny. She wanted to read the Hunger Games too, so I bought her the Hunger Games books, and I don't think she finished the second one. I didn't finish the second one either, but I bought her the 50 Shades books, and I tell you what, man, as a guy walking out of Dillon's or walking up to the cash register, and I've got all three books, like in a collector's edition type set up and I'm walking up to pay. And of course, the time that I went, the self-checkout wasn't open. So I had to go through, and I bought the books, and I'm like, they're not for me, they're for my wife. And they're like, yeah, they
Jamie's
are. They're for your
surprised
wife.
Jamie's surprised that the contract was what made me run from the 50 Shades book. And to be in my defense, not a lot had happened by the time they get to the contract. Nothing that really crazy of, and I don't know. I'm assuming the rest of it's got all kinds of weird 50 Shade-ish type bondage scenes or whatever in there. But and I'll read it. Like I said, I'm not a prude. I'll read whatever. The writing was not very good, and I was bored, and so I left the book. I also listened to all 5 of the Twilight books on audiobook, and they got to be. Is it 5? Well, all of them, whatever they are. It felt like 5. If it wasn't 5, they're all very long. But I kind of wanted to like it, and I liked parts of it. But man, I got tired. I was like, but I hung in till the end.
I watched the movies. I didn't read the books. I think I actually read the first book and then I just watched the movies to catch the rest of it. It's interesting to me though that those, like, typically people, you get the majority of people that you talk to and you say, oh, you're a writer. What do you write? And you say science fiction. And they're like, oh, I don't read science fiction. I don't like that.
And then they say, I haven't read a book since high school.
Yeah, but then they say that they love Allegiant, or they love Harry Potter, or they love The Hunger Games, and I'm like,
not science fiction.
Science fiction fantasy. It's all science fiction fantasy.
All speculative fiction.
Yeah. But I told you the other day, I
was listening to one where they're talking about how, or somebody said, I think I might have been listening to one of the Sean Platt podcasts with Scott King, where, or somebody on some podcast I listened to, they said, well, I don't want to listen to that made up stuff, that made up fantasy stuff. I want to watch a Western. And they're like, yeah, because that's real. Because that's real. People are always gunning each other down in saloons. Anyway.
You know what's funny about that? Jamie's mentioning the battle scene in Twilight, and I don't know which one specifically she's referring to, but I thought of the one at the end of the movie, and I haven't read it in the book, so I don't know how it's any different. Spoiler alert! But when you watch the movie and they're in this setup for this epic battle standoff type deal, and they charge at each other, and everybody starts fighting, and they're ripping people's heads off, and main characters die, and then the land opens up underneath them, and people are falling into the earth and burning alive, and I mean it was pretty gnarly, and then it ends, and you're like,
"What?"
The mind reader, she sees the future, and she like basically lets go of the leader of the bad guys and steps back, and it was all like a premonition. Basically, it was all this is what could happen.
That's I was like, Dallas.
What? But it's funny because a lot of people that didn't read the books when they went to the movie theater and watched it. My wife said that when she watched it, there was people like crying and screaming, and like I can imagine like gnashing of teeth and wailing of like just people going nuts over that, and then how dumb they would feel when they're like, "Oh yeah, it was just a dream. Never mind."
We've been talking for a while, and I've been trying not to say for about the last 30 minutes. I am freezing. I don't know why.
Are you cold? Because I'm sweating.
I'm freezing. You have like the nice tropical fish back there, and somehow I miscalculated. And I'm not drinking coffee because the coffee wasn't done when we started. I'm like,
oh man, maybe that's why I'm sweating.
I'm bouncing around. I keep bouncing my feet, and I'm figuring people are like, "What is wrong with this guy?"
It's like you're getting ready to Hulk out, man.
Yeah. I wear this shirt because my 5-year-old, every time he sees it, he goes, "Dad, that's a cool shirt." And that makes my day.
That's any reason.
You want to be the Hulk, Dad? Yeah, I want to be the Hulk. You can be the Hulk if you keep working out. I'm like, no.
If a 5-year-old tells you they love your shirt, I mean, you're pretty much obligated to wear it. I don't think you can wear it out of that. Mm-hmm. No. Well, I think we're coming up to the end of our time on the show. I'm not exactly where we're at. I think we could probably cut it off here. I would say just when we end it, just hit keep the blab open, just stop the recording. For those of you that are just listening to the podcast and not actually watching it, we're using blab, and we got that idea from the SPP guys. And blab allows us to interact with people that watch the show. And so if you guys ever want to come on and watch, we do it between 9 and 10 on Fridays. And we may look at doing different times if we're going to have people on the show. I know I talked to McGlasson yesterday, and he said he'd love to be on, but he can't do Friday morning, so we might have to do a Saturday show.
I'm not sure where he lives exactly. What's his time? What time is it where he's at?
St. Louis.
Okay,
St.
so
Louis.
he's roughly where we're at.
Yeah,
as far as time zones and stuff.
I want to thank Jamie and Ala. Oh, I'm going to pronounce it. Alizar Universe. Boom. High five myself for joining us today, and everybody else that popped in and out to watch. If you're listening, thanks for listening. You can subscribe on Podbeam, and very shortly it's going to be up on YouTube, or not YouTube, but it will be on YouTube, but iTunes. I mean, thanks for everybody that's listening. We'll be back next week. Again, this is Josh and Scott. We're Keystroke Medium, and thanks for listening.
Yep. See you next week. Thanks. All right, I'm gonna pause it. We can.